The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was not heaven, not a hospital ceiling, not the black water under the bridge where my last memory had ended. It was the cracked plastic clock above the media lab door, its red numbers blinking 7:04 p.m., the colon between the digits flashing like a warning light. For 3 seconds, I could not breathe. For 5, I could only stare at my own hands, alive hands, younger hands, hands without the scar from the glass award I had smashed in the life where everything had gone wrong. Then someone snapped her fingers in front of my face and said, "Maya, stop being dramatic. I need you to fix my video before midnight." That voice, sweet when adults were listening, sharpened when they turned away. Clara Vale leaned over my desk with her perfect curtain of honey brown hair, her contest lanyard glittering against her white blouse, and a USB drive dangling from her fingers like a hook with bait still wriggling on it. Behind her, 2 girls from the broadcast club hovered with the hungry smiles of people who had already decided the ending. On my screen, the editing software was open. On the desk, my notebook was turned to the page where I had written the export settings Clara had begged me for in my first life. I remembered this moment with a violence that made my stomach twist. 6 hours later, I would finish editing Clara's student-made video entry, correcting her shaky footage, rebuilding her audio, fixing her subtitles, cutting around her mistakes, and making her look like the kind of visionary the national judges loved. At 11:52 p.m., she would upload it under her name. At 12:08 a.m., she would message me a single heart emoji. At noon the next day, she would win the Bright Frame Youth Video Contest, the scholarship, the internship, the school's applause, and my future. 3 weeks after that, when the organizers discovered my files on the project timeline and questioned why the winning entry had my editing metadata inside it, Clara would cry in the principal's office and say I had hacked her entry out of jealousy. I would be suspended, humiliated, and quietly removed from the university recommendation list. My mother would ask why I had let someone use me again. My father would stop looking at the email from the scholarship board after the second rejection. And Clara, who had built her crown from my unpaid work, would graduate smiling under a banner that called her a rare, original voice. In that first life, I edited her video until my hands cramped and thanked her when she offered me leftover convenience store coffee. In this life, with the clock blinking 7:04 and my lungs still remembering drowning, I looked at the USB drive swinging from her fingers and said, "No." Clara laughed because she thought I had made a joke. She always laughed first, not because anything was funny, but because laughter gave her followers permission to treat other people like furniture. "No," she repeated, tilting her head. "Maya, don't start. The entry closes at midnight. I just need you to clean up a few things, stabilize some shots, fix the audio, maybe do the subtitles, maybe compress it properly because the upload portal keeps rejecting my file. It's nothing for you." She slid the USB drive closer until it touched my keyboard. The little metal casing clicked against the space bar like a countdown. In the old timeline, that click had sounded like obligation. Now it sounded like a trap disarming itself. I pushed the drive back with one finger. "It's not nothing," I said. The 2 girls behind her exchanged looks. Brielle, who always wore lip gloss so thick her mouth looked wet under fluorescent lights, folded her arms and said, "You're seriously refusing?" After Clara helped you get into broadcast club. That was the story Clara had sold to everyone. She had discovered me. The truth was simpler. I had fixed the club's broken audio mixer during orientation while Clara filmed herself pretending to direct, and when the advisor praised me, Clara introduced me as our quiet technical girl, a label that stuck harder than gum under a desk. I was the quiet technical girl, the emergency editor, the one who stayed late, the one who turned disasters into polished miracles and watched other girls step into the light holding my work. "I'm using the lab for my own entry," I said, and this time my voice did not shake. Clara's smile thinned. "Your entry?" Her eyes flicked to my screen. She had forgotten I had one. In the old life, I had abandoned it at 7:30 when she cried about her corrupted file. My film, a rough but honest documentary about my mother's night shift sewing circle, had stayed half-cut in a folder named MAY_final_maybe. I remembered opening that folder months later after everything and feeling like I had found a body. The footage had still been there, my mother laughing softly with pins between her lips, aunties folding fabric under warm kitchen light, their hands moving with a rhythm that made hardship look graceful. I had traded that story for Clara's fake sincerity. Never again. Clara looked at the visible timeline on my monitor, saw my mother's face paused mid-laugh, and gave a small, bright sigh. That's cute. But mine has an actual chance. You know how these contests work. They want impact. They want polish. They want someone who can represent the school. There it was, wrapped in silk. Your story is small. Your work is useful. Your place is behind mine. Something hot moved through my chest, but I held it still. In my first life, anger had made me sloppy. In this one, I let it sharpen quietly. Then you should polish yours, I said. For a heartbeat, the room went strange. Even the old computer fan beside my ankle seemed to pause. The media lab was usually loud after school, full of clicking mice, rolling chairs, whispered gossip, and the stale smell of instant noodles students weren't supposed to eat near the equipment. But at that moment, every sound drew back as Clara's mask shifted, not fell. Clara never let it fall in public. It simply rotated, a beautiful painted door revealing another beautiful painted door behind it, each one locked. Maya, she said, lowering her voice into the version she used when she wanted to sound wounded, I don't know what's going on with you, but don't punish me because you're stressed. We're friends. The word hit me so hard I almost laughed. Friends. In the old life, a friend was apparently someone who sent you 37 voice messages between 8 p.m. and midnight, each more frantic than the last, then deleted the entire chat after winning. A friend was someone who told the disciplinary committee, through tears, that you had always been obsessive about editing credit. A friend was someone who visited your house once, accepted your mother's dumplings, complimented the curtains, then later told people your family was sweet but intense. I had spent years thinking cruelty was always loud. Clara had taught me the most efficient cruelty wore perfume and asked for favors in front of witnesses. We're classmates, I said. Not friends. Brielle gasped in the exaggerated way girls gasp when they are delighted by a fight, but want to look morally horrified. Clara's cheeks flushed, the smallest crack in her porcelain.
Fine, she said.
Classmates help each other. I helped you with your application essay. You corrected 2 commas. I introduced you to Mr. Wren, after he had already approved my lab access. I defended you when people said you were weird. That one landed differently, not because it was true, but because she had said it in the exact tone she used in my memory, sitting across from the assistant principal as she explained why I had always been socially off. I leaned back from the desk. Who said I was weird? Clara blinked. It was the wrong question, and she knew it. The girls behind her went still. I watched her calculate, searching for a clean way out. In the old life, I would have rushed to save her from the awkwardness she created. I would have smiled, changed the topic, accepted the drive, eaten the insult, and called it maturity. This time I waited. The clock blinked 7:09. The contest portal closed in 4 hours and 51 minutes. Clara needed me more with every passing second, and for the first time, I let the silence become hers to carry. She recovered by touching her forehead as if she had developed a sudden headache. I'm not doing this. I came because I trusted you. The file is mostly done anyway. That was the second lie. I knew her footage better than she did because in my first life I had spent 4.5 hours discovering its problems one by one. Interviews recorded with a camera microphone under traffic noise, B-roll shot vertically and horizontally at random, a title sequence stolen from a template with missing fonts, music downloaded from a website that required attribution, subtitle timing so chaotic one judge might think the students in the video were predicting their own lines, and the final section supposedly about youth resilience, ending on a shot of Clara, looking thoughtfully out a window she had asked someone to open wider for better backlight. Then upload it, I said. She stared at me. I told you the portal rejects it. Then check the rules. I did. Another lie. She had skimmed them and highlighted the parts about prize money. I turned to my own bag, pulled out my printed guidelines, and placed them on the desk. The top page was wrinkled because, in the old life, I had spilled coffee on it at 10:16 while Clara screamed that her video had exported with no sound. I had printed it again in this life, without remembering printing it, proof that Rebirth did not erase habit. File size under 2 gigabytes, I said, tapping the page. MP4 container.
H.264 codec. AC audio.
No unlicensed music. No third-party motion templates unless you have a commercial license. English captions burned in or submitted as SRT. Runtime between 4 and 6 minutes. Upload must be complete before 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m. late. Incomplete, corrupted, or inaccessible links are not reviewed. Clara's gaze dropped to the page, then darted away. Exactly. That's why I need you.
No.
That's why you need to read. Brielle stepped forward, anger finally beating curiosity. You know what? Clara is doing this for all of us. If she wins, the whole school gets attention. Why are you being selfish? I looked at her, really looked. In the old life, Brielle had posted the first vague story about me. Some people can't handle seeing another girl succeed. She had used a crying, laughing emoji. The post had been up for 14 minutes before Clara replied, "Please don't attack anyone, babes. Let the truth come out naturally." By morning, the truth had been whatever Clara needed it to be. If the whole school's reputation depends on me editing Clara's entry without credit, I said, then the school should be worried. One of the younger broadcast boys at the back snorted and immediately pretended to cough. Clara heard it. Her jaw tightened. Good. Not because I wanted an audience, but because shadows only protect people who know how to use them. I reached for my headphones and put them on, not playing anything, just lowering the curtain between us. Clara's reflection hovered in the black edge of my monitor. For the first time that evening, she looked less like a star and more like a girl standing too close to a locked door. At 7:18, she tried the soft attack. At 7:26, the moral attack. At 7:39, the practical attack. By 8:02, she was pacing behind my chair while I cut my mother's interview and pretended each click of my mouse was not a pulse of old fear. "I don't understand why you're acting like I asked you to commit a crime," she said. "It's just editing. Everyone gets help." I did not turn around. On my screen, my mother leaned over a sewing machine, her face lit by the lamp we kept beside the rice cooker because our kitchen had only one good bulb. She was saying, in Mandarin accented English, "When your hands are tired, you learn which stitches matter." In my first life, I had cut that line because I thought it was too quiet for contest. Now I listened to it twice, then placed it after a shot of women threading needles at midnight. It was not too quiet. I had been trained to mistake quiet for weak. "Help is when someone teaches you," I said. "You want me to do it for you?" Clara stopped pacing. "I would credit you." I laughed before I could stop myself, and the sound came out too sharp. Everyone looked over. Clara's eyes narrowed.
What?
Nothing. No, say it. Fine. She wanted a performance. I had survived one already. I took off my headphones and turned my chair around. Where would you credit me? In the description. The contest portal doesn't display descriptions to judges. Then, in the end, credits. Your final video already has a title card saying written, directed, filmed, and edited by Clara Vale. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had not expected me to know. In the old life, I had changed that title card at 11:47 because I felt ashamed looking at it. Clara had watched me type my name in tiny letters under hers, then said, "Maybe not, because the judges might get confused about authorship." I deleted it. That memory rose now like a hand on my throat. I turned back to my screen before it could show on my face. "Ask Mr. Wren," I said. "He's the advisor." Clara gave a breathy, wounded laugh. "He left at 6. You know that." Of course I knew. In my first life, she had waited until all the adults were gone before becoming desperate. But Rebirth had not just given me memory, it had given me preparation. At 6:41, before the old timeline would have turned, I had scheduled an email to Mr. Wren with my project log attached. At 7 o'clock, I had signed into the contest portal using the lab computer under my own student account. At 7:03, I had turned on screen recording, not pointed at Clara, not illegal, just recording my own editing workspace and audio because I had learned that people like Clara did not need to be trapped by lies if you kept the truth awake.
Then email him, I said.
Or upload what you have. You're enjoying this. That accusation was so absurd, so close to what she would later say to everyone, that my fingers froze above the keyboard. Was I enjoying it? Not the fear. Not the memory of drowning. Not the ache when I saw my mother's face and remembered how she had cried quietly over a suspension letter. But there was a clean brightness in refusing, a terrifying relief, like opening a window in a room I had been told was sealed. No, I said. I'm surviving it. Clara did not understand that answer, but someone else did. At 8:11, Noah from AV, a tall boy with ink on his sleeve and a permanent look of sleep deprivation, rolled his chair over from the equipment cabinet. In the old life, Noah had been one of the few people who did not post about me, which was not the same as defending me, but when your world burns down, even silence can look like mercy. He glanced at Clara, then at me. Do you need the second audio workstation? He asked. The question sounded ordinary. It wasn't. The second workstation had the only licensed noise reduction plugin in the lab. Clara needed it desperately. I needed it for one scene, maybe two. In the old life, Noah had let Clara use it because Clara asked first, then he left with his skateboard under his arm. Tonight, he looked at me like he had heard enough to choose. I answered carefully. I booked the station and the audio workstation from 7 to 10. The sheet is on the door. He nodded.
Cool.
Clara spun toward him. Noah, I just need to run a quick export.
Booking sheet, he said.
Are you serious? Usually. The younger broadcast boy snorted again, less quietly this time. Clara's eyes flashed, but Noah had already rolled away. That was the first pattern break of the night. In the old life, people had drifted toward Clara by default, as if she generated gravity. But gravity depended on mass, and maybe memory had made me heavy enough to bend the room differently. I looked at the booking sheet taped to the glass. My name, 7 to 10 o'clock, written in black marker. Clara's name was nowhere. In the first life, I had not signed up because I assumed I could use whatever was free. A tiny decision. A hinge. How many disasters begin with a girl not wanting to seem difficult? Clara took out her phone and began typing. Within 30 seconds, my own phone buzzed. Then again. Then again.
Group chat.
Broadcast seniors. Clara, is anyone else in the lab? Maya is having some kind of meltdown and refusing to help with the contest entry. Brielle, it's actually scary. She's being so cold. Nessa, wait, what happened? Clara, I don't want drama. I'm just worried because the deadline is tonight and she promised. There it was, the first public seed. In my old life, I would have panicked and defended myself with too many words, the kind that sound guilty, because they arrive breathless. This time, I took a screenshot, saved it, and replied with one sentence. I never promised to edit Clara's entry. I'm working on my own submission, and the lab booking sheet confirms my reserve time. Then I set my phone face down. Clara's phone buzzed. She read my message, and for a second her face went so blank it looked unfinished. Then she smiled. Not at me. At the room. Wow, she said softly.
Okay.
I see who you are now. The strange thing about getting a second life is that people expect the miracle to make you fearless, but fear does not vanish just because you know its shape. At 8:30, while Clara moved to a dusty corner computer and began opening her project with the violence of someone punishing the mouse, my hand started trembling so badly I had to pause my own edit. The old future flickered behind my eyes. The committee table, the principal's disappointed sigh, the contest organizer speaking to me like I was a stain they were trying to remove without damaging the fabric, Clara's trembling lip as she said, I trusted Maya with my raw files because she said she wanted to learn from me. Learn from her. Even memory had teeth. I went to the sink in the back room, ran cold water over my wrists, and stared at my reflection in the narrow cabinet mirror. I looked 17. I felt ancient. My hair was coming loose from its clip. There were ink smudges on my fingers. My eyes had the startled brightness of someone who had climbed out of a grave and found homework waiting. Do not explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, I whispered, not because it was profound, but because in my first life my mother had said it while folding my suspension letter into thirds. I had hated her for sounding calm. I had thought calm meant surrender. Now I knew calm was sometimes the last wall before collapse. When I returned, Clara was standing over my desk. My headphones were moved. My notebook was open. The printed contest guidelines were gone. Looking for something? I asked. She jumped just slightly. You left your things everywhere. My notebook was closed. You're paranoid. And you're touching my desk. Brielle appeared beside her like a summoned witness. She was just checking if you had her file. I almost smiled. The old trap had arrived early. In the first life, Clara had left her USB drive beside my laptop, then later claimed I had copied her project without permission. Tonight, she needed a thread, any thread, connecting me to her broken entry. I looked at the desk. Her USB drive was there again, placed near my mouse, close enough that a photo could make it look like mine. My pulse kicked once, hard. Then I reached into my bag, took out my phone, and photographed the desk from above. Clara's expression changed. Why are you taking pictures? Because your USB drive walked back to my workstation. Noah looked over. The younger boy looked over. Brielle's mouth tightened. I picked up the drive by its plastic edge and held it out. Take it. Clara did not move. If she took it, she admitted it was hers. If she didn't, she left evidence. This time the silence did not belong to me. After 3 full seconds, she snatched it. You're actually insane, she whispered. But whispers travel in rooms built for microphones. Noah heard. The boy heard. And most importantly, my screen recording heard. At 8:57, Clara changed tactics again, because desperation is creative when pride is cornered. She sat at the corner computer and began asking the room questions loudly, pretending she was not asking me. Does anyone know why a project would say media offline? No one answered. Like, if all the clips are red?
Still nothing.
In my old life, I had fixed that problem by relinking her footage from 3 separate folders because she had dragged files directly from a USB instead of importing them properly. Tonight, I selected a shot of my mother's hands smoothing blue fabric and let the red offline boxes remain Clara's problem. Does anyone know if you can export with offline media and reling later? She asked, voice thinner. Noah leaned back. No, I wasn't asking you. You asked anyone. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop a laugh. The laugh would have been costly. Clara could survive anger. She knew how to redirect it. But she struggled with being made ordinary. At 9:10, she sent another group chat message. Can someone please tell Maya this isn't funny?
I'm literally shaken.
I screenshotted that too. At 9:14, my phone rang. My mother. For one wild second, I feared time itself had noticed me changing the night and had called in a warning. I answered with one earbud in.
Ma.
Are you eating? She asked. In the background, I heard the sewing machine and the kettle. Same sounds. Same night. In the old life, I had ignored her call because Clara was crying and the export had failed. My mother had left a voicemail saying, Good luck, little moon. Don't forget your own thing. I did forget. I forgot so completely that when the organizers later asked what my entry was about, I could not speak.
Iotte, ilit.
I'm finishing my video. There was a pause. Your video? Not someone else's. My throat tightened. Mothers know the shape of their daughters' mistakes before the daughters do. Mine, I said. Only mine. She exhaled softly. Good. Then make sure they can hear the people, not just see them. That became the second pattern break. In the old edit, I had focused on Clara's face because she had demanded glamour. In mine, I returned to the audio timeline and raised the women's voices. I let the sewing machine remain under them like percussion. I let one Andy laugh too loudly. I left my mother's line about tired hands. I stopped trying to make ordinary people sound cinematic and started making the film honest enough that cinema would have to bend toward them. Behind me, Clara muttered about missing assets and cursed under her breath when a preview window displayed a giant watermark across her opening shot. Trial version. The younger broadcast boy whispered, "Oh no." I did not turn around, but something inside me, something bruised and petty and very human, whispered back, "Oh yes." By 9:42, the lab had transformed from a workspace into a storm shelter. Students who had claimed they were leaving stayed under the excuse of charging laptops, cleaning cables, checking renders, doing anything except admitting they wanted to see whether Clara Vale could survive a deadline without someone else's hands. The fluorescent lights hummed. Rain ticked against the high windows, sudden and hard, blurring the car park into silver streaks. Clara's perfect hair frizzed near her temples. Brielle kept whispering encouragements that sounded increasingly like instructions from a person who had never opened editing software. "Can't you just, save it as HD?" she said. Clara snapped, "I am saving it as HD. But maybe make it smaller HD." Brielle.
Sorry.
My own timeline was at 4 minutes and 52 seconds. The contest minimum was 4 minutes, maximum 6. In the first life, I had believed length meant value. Clara's entry had been 5 minutes and 59 seconds because she insisted judges liked fullness. Tonight, every frame had to earn its place. I cut a beautiful shot of thread spools because it repeated an idea. I cut my own voice from an interview question because the women answered better without me. I cut a dramatic music swell because it made my mother's tired smile feel manipulated. There was power in deletion, I realized. Not just in editing video, but in editing life. Cut the apology that invites argument. Cut the favor that drains you. Cut the friendship that only exists when you are useful. At 10 o'clock, my lab booking ended. Clara stood immediately. "Finally. I need the audio station." I saved my project, closed my session, and picked up my bag. Her face lit with ugly relief. Then I said, "I'm moving to the library suite." I booked that from 10 to midnight. The relief died so quickly I almost felt the air leave with it. "You booked both?" "Yes." "That's selfish. That's planning. You don't even need the audio station anymore." "Then you don't need me." Noah coughed into his fist. It might have been a laugh. I logged out, checked that my external drive was in my pocket, and took my printed guidelines from under the scanner where Clara had hidden them badly. She saw me find them. We looked at each other across the desk, and for a moment neither of us pretended. Her eyes were cold. Mine probably were too. "You think because you made one little plan you're safe?" she said under her breath. The old Maya would have asked what she meant. The reborn Maya knew threats love questions. I simply said, "I think you should focus on your upload." The library suite was colder, quieter, and brighter than the media lab, with glass walls that made every movement visible from the corridor. That was why I had booked it. In the old life, Clara had dragged me into dark corners, empty stairwells, private chats, spaces where she could wound me and later deny there had been a knife. Tonight, I chose glass. I signed into the workstation at 10:07 and placed my phone upright beside the monitor, not recording faces, just keeping the time visible. Rain hammered the windows. My inbox pinged. Mr. Wren had replied to my scheduled project log. "Great initiative keeping records. Good luck tonight. Keep your final export and raw project files backed up." In my first life, he had looked so disappointed at the committee meeting, not cruel, just tired. "Maya, why didn't you document the collaboration?" he had asked. "Because I thought trust was documentation. Because I thought being useful would make me protected. Because girls like Clara make you feel rude for asking the kind of questions that save you." I forwarded his reply to myself, saved a PDF, and returned to the edit. At 10:22, my first export began. Estimated time, 31 minutes. I had allowed for 3 attempts. Clara, by contrast, burst into the library corridor at 10:24 with Brielle behind her, saw me through the glass, and froze. She looked like someone who had opened a door and found not the victim she left behind, but a witness already seated under bright lights. She tapped on the glass. I pointed to the sign that said Quiet Study Suite. Booked. She held up her phone. I looked down. New message, private this time.
Clara, I'm sorry.
I'm actually sorry.
Please.
I don't know what's happening with the file. I can't lose this. My thumb hovered over the screen. There is a kind of apology that is really a request wearing a mask. I knew the difference now. I typed, "I'm sorry you're having issues. I can't work on your entry. Please contact the contest technical support or Mr. N." She read it through the glass. Her mouth twisted. Then came the next message. "Clara, I'll tell them you agreed." I screenshotted it before she deleted it. She deleted it anyway because habit is stronger than wisdom. I sent the screenshot to my email. Clara's eyes widened when she realized. The first export failed at 10:41 because one audio file had slipped out of sync by 12 frames. In another life, that failure would have undone me. Tonight, I whispered, "Good catch." Fixed it and exported again. Outside the glass, Clara paced like a queen locked out of her own coronation. At 11:03, the real midnight machinery began. Not magic, not fate, just systems revealing who had respected them. My second export completed cleanly. I watched the file generate, checked the size, 1.2 gigabytes, opened it in a separate player, listened through the first minute, scrubbed to the middle, checked captions, watched the ending twice. In the last shot, my mother turned off the sewing lamp at 2:13 a.m., and the kitchen went dark except for the blue glow from the microwave clock. Her voice carried over the darkness. People think invisible work means small work, but the world is held together by things nobody claps for. I had forgotten filming that. Or maybe I had buried it because the old timeline had taught me nobody clapped for me either. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. Crying wasted water, my grandmother used to say, then cried at commercials. I uploaded the file to the contest portal at 11:09. The progress bar moved slowly, then stalled at 43% because the universe has a sense of humor and a taste for cruelty. My heart slammed so hard the edges of the room blurred. I refreshed nothing, touched nothing, waited. At 11:15, it moved again. At 11:21, processing began. At 11:26, the portal displayed. Submission received. Entry ID, BF7780-1MZ. I took a screenshot, downloaded the confirmation receipt, emailed it to myself and Mr. N, saved copies to my drive and cloud, then sat very still with my hands in my lap. For the first time since waking into 7:04, I had done the thing I had died regretting. My own entry existed outside my computer. My mother's voice was in the world. The rest, I told myself, could burn. But stories rarely end when the heroine submits the file. That would be too merciful. At 11:31, Clara entered the library suite without knocking because locked doors had never applied to her. "I need 5 minutes," she said. Her face was pale under the makeup. Brielle hovered behind her, no longer excited. "The portal says my file has unsupported audio. I fixed the codec, but now the captions are gone. I just need you to tell me which setting." I kept my voice low. "Leave. Maya, please. Leave. You already submitted. You're done. What does it cost you to help me now?" There it was, the oldest trap in a cleaner dress. If you are no longer actively bleeding, donate blood. I stood. The glass walls turned our reflections into layered ghosts. "It costs me my name," I said. "It costs me my work. It costs me the part of myself that knows when I'm being used and still smiles so nobody calls me bitter." Her lips parted, and I saw, for 1 second, not regret but calculation interrupted. She had expected guilt. She had not expected language. "You're making me look bad," she whispered. I looked past her to the clock. 11:34. "No," I said. "I'm making you look like yourself." She slapped me at 11:36. Not hard enough to injure, not gentle enough to deny. Her palm cracked across my cheek with a sound so sharp the librarian at the far desk stood up. Everything stopped. Brielle made a noise like a swallowed scream. Clara froze with her hand still raised, and I knew before she did that she had made the first honest thing of the night. Violence is terrible, but it is also clarifying. For hours she had lived in implication, insinuation, sweetness, helplessness, all the soft weapons that leave no fingerprints. Now her fingerprints burned on my face. I did not slap her back. The old Maya might have, not from courage but from exhaustion, and Clara would have used that. Reborn Maya stood inside the sting and looked directly at the librarian. "Please call Mr. Wren or administration," I said. "I am being harassed during a contest submission deadline." Clara's face crumpled instantly. She provoked me. The words came too fast. "She's been bullying me all night. She sabotaged my file. She took the audio station. The suite has cameras," the librarian said, voice cold enough to frost glass. Pattern break 3. Clara went silent. I had forgotten the cameras. Or maybe some part of me had chosen glass for more reasons than I could consciously name. The librarian stepped closer. "Both of you outside." "I can't," Clara said, panic cracking through now. "My upload." "Outside." At 11:39, Clara stood in the library corridor with her laptop clutched to her chest while the librarian called the after-hours administrator. At 11:41, Clara's mother called her phone, and Clara rejected the call. At 11:42, Brielle whispered, "Maybe just upload the version you have." Clara snapped, "It has no sound in the last minute." "But something is better than nothing." "Not if it makes me look stupid." That was the sentence. Not if it makes me look stupid. Not if the truth is ugly. Not if the work does not come polished by someone else's exhaustion. She looked at me then, and hatred replaced fear so completely that I understood why my first life had ended the way it did. I used to think Clara destroyed me to protect herself. Now I saw she had also enjoyed the efficiency of it. Some people do not hate you because you wronged them. They hate you because you witnessed the moment they could not become what they pretended to be. At 11:47, the administrator arrived in a raincoat, hair damp, glasses fogged. Mr. Wren appeared 2 minutes later in a hoodie, having been pulled from whatever quiet evening teachers are supposed to have. He looked at my cheek, then at Clara's laptop, then at the clock. "What happened?" he asked. Clara inhaled. I interrupted before the performance could begin. "I have screenshots, booking records, my project log, the contest guidelines, and the message Clara deleted after threatening to say I agreed to edit her entry." It was the first time I had ever listed evidence before emotions. Mr. Wren's expression changed. Not toward belief exactly, but toward attention. Attention was enough. At 11:50, the hallway outside the library became a courtroom with bad lighting. Clara tried crying first. She said she was overwhelmed. She said everyone knew I was helping her. She said we had a creative partnership. She said I suddenly turned hostile because I was jealous. Each sentence was an old ghost wearing fresh clothes. In my first life, she had said those things after midnight, when the file was uploaded and the credits stolen, and the adults were trying to explain a mess that had already hardened into scandal. Tonight, time still moved. The portal still waited. Her entry still sat broken on her laptop like a witness refusing to cooperate. Mr. Wren asked, "Maya, did you work on Clara's entry at any point tonight?" No, my voice stayed steady because I had practiced this answer in nightmares. "Did you agree to?" "No, do you have any of her files?"
No.
She repeatedly placed her USB near my workstation after I refused. I photographed it and returned it. Clara sobbed harder. Listen to how rehearsed she sounds. That almost worked. Adults distrust girls who are too prepared because they have been trained to read preparation as manipulation and distress as truth. I saw the doubt flicker, tiny but real. So, I changed the rhythm. "I sound rehearsed," I said, because last time I didn't. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Everyone stared. For one terrifying second, Rebirth itself seemed to stand in the hallway beside me, dripping river water, waiting to be exposed. I swallowed. I've been blamed before for not keeping records. I didn't want that to happen again. Mr. Wren's face softened with recognition, not of time travel, but of a student who had learned a lesson the hard way. Clara seized the pause. "She's making this about herself. My upload closes in 9 minutes. The administrator checked the clock. Then upload your own work. For words.
Clean.
Final." Clara looked as if she had been slapped back by the universe. "I can't," she whispered. "Why not?" asked Mr. Wren. She had no answer that did not reveal the whole architecture. Because the project was broken. Because she had not learned the software. Because her title card lied. Because the music needed a license.
Because the template wanted payment.
Because the captions were gone. Because the story she meant to tell depended on invisible labor she no longer controlled. At 11:53, she dropped onto a bench and opened the laptop with shaking hands. Everyone watched her try.
She imported something. Exported something.
The progress bar estimated 18 minutes. She canceled. Tried a faster preset. The file ballooned to 3.8 gigabytes. She cursed. Changed settings. The audio vanished. She restored. The captions burned in with black boxes covering half the frame. Brielle whispered, "Clara," and for the first time all night her voice contained not worship but pity. Clara heard it and looked more wounded by pity than accusation. I stood 3 steps away, cheek burning, receipt safe in my inbox, and realized the revenge I had imagined in my darkest moments was too small. I had dreamed of exposing her with a speech, of forcing her to confess, of watching the school turn on her. But there was something colder and more complete about doing nothing while the truth met a deadline. At 11:58, Clara uploaded a file. Not the polished version from my first life. Not the 6-minute miracle that had made judges cry. A 612 megabyte emergency export named Clara_final_final_use_this_ MP4, which told me everything about its condition before anyone opened it. The portal accepted the upload at first. Clara gasped, hope returning so suddenly it made her look younger. The progress bar sprinted to 92%. Brielle clasped her hands. Mr. Wren watched without expression. The administrator checked the incident form on his phone. I watched the clock. 11:59. The upload stuck at 92. The little circle spun.
Clara whispered, "No, no, no."
The circle spun.
The clock changed.
12 o'clock. The contest portal refreshed automatically. A red banner appeared across Clara's screen. Submission incomplete. Deadline passed. Upload failed. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Clara made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not a sob, not a scream, but something raw and animal, dragged out of a place deeper than performance. It should have satisfied me completely. Instead, it made the room feel colder. Revenge is not always fireworks. Sometimes it is standing close enough to see that a person's collapse is smaller than the damage they once caused. Clara turned on me. You did this. Her voice was empty now, scraped clean of sweetness. You planned this. You took the stations. You turned everyone against me. You wanted my upload to fail. No, I said. I wanted mine to succeed. Same thing. And there it was, the confession inside the accusation. To Clara, my success and her failure had always been the same event because she had built her path across my back. If I stood up, she fell. Mr. Wren heard it too. His eyes moved to me, then to her. Clara, he said quietly, did you produce this entry yourself? She wiped her face with her sleeve. Of course. Then why did you require Maya to edit it? I didn't require. You said she sabotaged you by refusing to help. That implies you were depending on her. Clara's mouth trembled. The logic had finally closed around her. Brielle stepped backward as if distance could rewrite her role. The administrator asked Clara to hand over the laptop for the incident review, not to inspect contest content, but because of the harassment complaint and the slap. Clara clutched it. No, Mr. Wren's voice hardened. Clara. Something in that tone broke the last of her stagecraft. She shoved the laptop toward him and said, Fine. Look at it. Look at everything. See if I care. She cared. Her face said she cared so much it was eating her alive. Mr. Wren opened the project folder. The first thing visible was a folder named MY_REF_settings. My body went cold. Everyone saw it. Clara went still. Noah, who had arrived silently at some point with 2 security umbrellas and the expression of a man who had chosen the best possible night to forget his charger, whispered, That's unfortunate. I almost laughed. Almost. The folder changed the investigation from a failed upload to a map of intention. Inside were screenshots of my old export settings from club projects, a copy of a lower third template I had designed for last semester's charity livestream, a text file titled my_notes, and, unbelievably, a draft credit sequence with my name absent and Clara's name listed under every role. It did not prove she had stolen my work tonight, but it proved she had planned to use my methods while erasing the trail. Clara tried to explain that my_yef_ settings meant maybe reference settings, which was such a bad lie even Brielle closed her eyes. Mr. Wren asked where she got my template. Clara said club assets were shared. I said my template was never uploaded to the shared drive because it used my personal font license. He checked the properties. My student ID was embedded in the original file name. In my old life, metadata had been the weapon Clara turned on me. Tonight, metadata came home like a dog with blood on its teeth. The administrator took statements. The librarian described the slap. Noah described the USB drive and the public pressure. The younger broadcast boy, whose name I finally remembered was Leo, described hearing Clara call me insane and seeing her move my things. Brielle, faced with the terrible burden of choosing between loyalty and being implicated, suddenly developed a devotion to nuance. I didn't see Maya promise anything, she said weakly. I just thought because Clara said, Clara looked at her as if betrayal were something she had invented and patented. I almost felt sorry for Brielle. Almost. At 12:31, Mr. Wren walked me to the front office to get ice for my cheek. The halls were dark except for emergency lights. The school transformed into a place that looked underwater. Maybe every rebirth story has a moment when the second life feels less like victory than trespassing. I sat on a plastic chair with an ice pack wrapped in paper towel and listened to rain empty itself over the roof. Mr. Wren stood by the copier, tired and older than he had looked 6 hours ago. Maya, he said, I owe you an apology. I looked up. For what? For not noticing earlier how much work people were putting on you. In the first life, I had wanted someone to say exactly that. Now that the words existed, they did not heal everything, but they landed somewhere important. I let them, I said. That doesn't make it right. He leaned against the counter. Your submission went through? Yes. Good. A pause. Whatever happens with the contest, I'm proud of you for submitting your own work.
My throat closed.
Praise is dangerous when you have been starving. You want to swallow it whole and choke. I nodded instead. Through the office window, I saw Clara at the far end of the hall, sitting between the administrator and the librarian, face bare of tears now, staring at the floor. For the first time all night, she looked small, not harmless. Small is not harmless. Needles are small. Cracks are small. But she looked reduced to her actual size, no longer inflated by my fear. I thought the story would end at midnight because the title in my head had always ended there. Watched her contest upload break at midnight. But midnight was only the visible fracture. The real break happened the next morning at assembly, not with screaming or scandal, but with a missing chair. Clara's chair in the front row of Broadcast Club was empty. People noticed. Of course they noticed. The school lived on noticing and pretended it was community. Rumors moved before the bell. Clara missed the deadline. Clara assaulted someone. Clara's file was corrupted. Clara was set up. Clara had a secret editor. Clara was the victim of technical sabotage. Clara's mother was threatening to call the board. By second period, I had become 3 different villains and 2 different heroes depending on which bathroom you entered. In the old life, I had chased every rumor like a girl trying to catch smoke with her hands. In this life, I went to math, took notes, and let evidence travel slower but heavier. At lunch, Mr. Wren called an emergency broadcast club meeting. I expected dread. Instead, I felt something almost like curiosity. The room filled with students who had stayed late, students who had only heard fragments, and students who enjoyed being near trouble while calling it concern. Clara arrived 5 minutes late with her mother, Mrs. Vale, a woman with the same honey-brown hair and sharper shoes. Clara's cheekbones looked carved from ice.
She did not look at me.
Mrs. Vale did. I had seen that look before across the committee table in my old life, when she called me a confused girl who wanted attention. Today, her gaze slid over my face, paused at the faint red mark on my cheek, and moved away. Evidence made cowards of certain kinds of confidence. The deputy principal opened with a formal statement. There had been an incident during the contest deadline. An investigation was underway, harassment would not be tolerated, and no student should speculate online. That last part was adorable. Phones were already glowing under desks. Then Mr. Ren did something I did not expect. He projected the contest collaboration policy onto the screen. Before we discuss club conduct, he said, we need to clarify what counts as help and what counts as misrepresentation. Clara's head snapped up. Mrs. Vale's lips tightened. Mr. Ren continued, peer feedback is allowed. Technical advice is allowed. But submitting a work represented as individually edited, directed, and produced while relying on uncredited substantial labor is not allowed. Pressuring another student for that labor is also not allowed. He did not say Clara's name. He did not say mine.
He did not need to.
Sometimes the cleanest exposure is not an accusation but a rule read aloud in a room full of people suddenly remembering their own messages. Then came the twist that even my reborn memory had not prepared me for. The contest organizer had already emailed the school at 8:12 that morning. Not about Clara.
About me.
My submission had been flagged, not for violation, but for a request. The judges wanted a high-resolution copy because the uploaded version had processed with minor compression artifacts, and they were considering it for the finalist showcase. For 1 second after Mr. Ren read that, my ears filled with a sound like wind. Finalist showcase. My mother's kitchen. The sewing lamp. The aunties laughing. The work nobody clapped for. Clara finally looked at me, and whatever she saw on my face made her eyes shine with a hatred so polished it almost looked like grief. Brielle whispered, Maya, that's amazing, because people love success once it has permission to be admired. I did not answer. My hands were under the desk, clasped so tightly my knuckles hurt. In the old life, Clara's one had made my name poisonous. In this life, my entry had made it out before she could. Mrs. Vale stood. This is inappropriate, she said. You're announcing one student's success while my daughter is being publicly humiliated. The deputy principal's expression did not change. No disciplinary outcome has been announced. Everyone knows what you're implying. Everyone knows what happened in the library because several students posted about it despite being told not to, he said, and the room went very still. Mrs. Vale sat down. The school could tolerate many things, but not parents discovering their children had created evidence while gossiping. Mr. Ren asked students to submit any messages or posts related to the incident, not to punish commentary first, but to prevent false claims from hardening. Phones vanished into pockets like guilty animals. Clara stood, so suddenly her chair scraped. I'm sorry, I'm not perfect, she said, voice trembling in that familiar, weaponized way. I'm sorry I trusted someone who clearly wanted to beat me. I'm sorry my file failed and everyone thinks that means I'm a fraud. Congratulations, Maya. You got what you wanted. There were tears now, real or close enough. In the old life, those tears would have rearranged the room. Today, they met the projected collaboration policy, the incident report, the deleted message screenshot, the camera footage, the broken upload, the folder with my name, and found no gap wide enough to crawl through. I stood, not because I planned to speak, but because some stories demand the body before the voice. Clara, I said, I didn't beat you. I stopped carrying you. The sentence moved through the room like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath. She flinched. So did I. After that, things happened with the dull speed of institutions pretending not to panic. Clara was suspended from broadcast club activities pending review. Her contest entry, incomplete and late, was automatically ineligible, so the school did not have to disqualify her, which allowed administrators to use words like unfortunate and procedural instead of dishonest. The slap became physical misconduct. The pressure campaign became peer boundary concerns. The folder with my assets became possible misuse of intellectual property, a phrase so clean it almost hid the dirt. Mrs. Vale argued. Clara cried. Brielle apologized to me in the hallway with the expression of a person hoping apology worked like disinfectant. I didn't know it was that serious, she said. You knew enough to call me scary. Her face reddened. I was just supporting my friend. Support shouldn't require lying about someone else. She nodded too quickly. Yeah.
No.
Totally.
I'm sorry.
In my first life, I would have accepted because refusing would make the hallway uncomfortable. In this one, I said, I hear you, and walked away. Not forgiveness. Not revenge. A door left closed. That afternoon, I went home before sunset for the first time in weeks. My mother was at the kitchen table trimming loose threads from a stack of altered school uniforms, the same blue fabric from my film folded beside her. She looked up and smiled. Then her smile faded when she saw my cheek. Who? She asked, and the single word contained generations of women ready to put down needles and pick up knives. It's handled, I said. By who?
Me.
And school. She did not like the second part, but accepted the first. I showed her the confirmation receipt, then the email from the contest organizer. She read it 3 times, lips moving silently. Finalist showcase, she said, as if translating it into a language her hope could understand. Maybe, I said. They're considering it. She touched the screen where her own paused face appeared in the thumbnail. My hair looks bad. I laughed then, really laughed, the kind that bends you forward and steals your breath. She tried to look offended and failed. We watched the video together on my laptop. Halfway through, she stopped trimming threads. By the end, she was crying without wiping her face. You made us look, she searched for the word. Like us, I said. She nodded.
Yes.
Like us, but seen. That was the prize I had not known I wanted. Not the scholarship, not the applause, not Clara's collapse, though I would be lying if I said those things did not matter. I wanted my work to carry the right people into the light. I wanted to stop confusing erasure with kindness. I wanted to become someone my first self could forgive. The finalist email arrived 2 days later at 6:18 a.m. while I was brushing my teeth. I screamed toothpaste onto the sink. My mother thought I had electrocuted myself. My father ran in holding a slipper like it was a weapon. The email said my film, Stitches After Midnight, had been selected for the Bright Frame Youth Video Contest Finalist Showcase and nominated for the Craft Award in Documentary Editing. Documentary editing. I read those 2 words until they blurred. In the old timeline, Clara had won the overall prize with my editing and then told the world I was unstable. In this one, the first recognition I received was not for being helpful, not for saving someone else, but for the exact craft she had tried to consume. At school, the news traveled faster than scandal because success is gossip with better shoes. Teachers congratulated me. Students who had never spoken to me said they always knew I was talented. Noah gave me a thumbs up from across the courtyard and then looked embarrassed by his own sincerity. Leo asked if he could help on my next project because he wanted to learn actual workflow, not panic workflow. I said yes, but only if he logged his own work. He saluted. Clara was absent. Her empty desk in English became a weather system. Everyone looked at it, then at me, then away. I told myself I did not care where she was. I cared. Not because I missed her, but because unfinished conflict has a scent, and Clara had never been someone to leave a room quietly unless she planned to return with matches. She returned Friday morning.
No entouraje. No lanyard.
Hair straightened, face pale, uniform perfect. She walked past my desk and placed a folded note on top of my notebook. The room inhaled. I stared at it. In my first life, I had opened every message from her immediately, conditioned by urgency. Tonight, no. Today, time still confused me when fear rose. I finished writing the sentence in my notebook before unfolding the paper. It said, "You think you're the only one who remembers?" For a moment, the classroom tilted. The words crawled off the paper and under my skin. I looked up. Clara sat 3 rows ahead, facing forward, posture perfect. The back of her neck was rigid. My heartbeat became a fist. It could mean anything. It could be a bluff. It could refer to some past argument, some old slight, some drama she believed I had dragged forward. But Rebirth had made me superstitious about impossible things. After class, I followed her into the corridor, not close enough to be accused, not far enough to lose her. She stopped beside the trophy case, where her reflection appeared among old debate plaques and dusty swimming medals. "What does this mean?" I asked, holding up the note. She smiled at our reflections instead of turning around. "It means you should have helped me." My blood went cold, but my voice did not. "Do you remember another version of that night?" Clara's smile twitched. A direct hit, then. For the first time since waking, I felt the ground fall away beneath the second life. I had assumed rebirth belonged to me like compensation, a private correction issued by the universe after an unfair ending. It had not occurred to me that the universe might be messy, that it might throw more than one person back into the same room and watch who changed. Clara turned then, and her eyes were not triumphant. They were exhausted. "I remember enough," she said. "I remember winning. I remember you making everything about yourself afterward. I remember people whispering that I used you. I remember my mother crying because the scholarship board asked questions. I remember you standing on the bridge in the rain like some tragic little martyr." My stomach lurched. In my last memory, I had been alone, or I thought I had.
Then.
Railing. Phone buzzing with another anonymous message. Thief.
Fraud.
Psycho editor. I had not jumped. That mattered. I had leaned over because I could not breathe, because the world had narrowed to water and noise, and then there had been footsteps, a shout, my heel slipping on wet concrete, my hand grabbing air. "You were there," I said. Clara looked away. "I followed you because I thought you were going to do something dramatic and blame me." The cruelty of that sentence was so precise it stunned me. "Did you call for help?" I tried. "Before or after I fell?" She did not answer. The trophy case reflected both of us. Two girls in the same uniform, one holding a note like evidence, the other guarding a memory like a weapon. "Why would you do it again?" I asked. "If you remembered what happened, why try to use me again?" Her laugh was soft and awful. "Because you were supposed to say yes again." There are moments when you realize a person's regret is not for the harm they caused, but for the inconvenience of consequences. Clara remembered my ruin, maybe even my death, and her lesson had not been I should not destroy people. Her lesson had been I need better control. "You thought if the night repeated, you could make it cleaner," I said. "You get the edited video, erase my traces, win without the scandal." Her eyes flashed. "And you thought you could turn everyone against me first. I thought I could save myself."
"Same thing," she said again.
The phrase followed us from midnight like a curse. This time, I heard the fear beneath it. Clara did not know how to exist in a world where other girls saving themselves did not count as an attack. I wish I could say I delivered a perfect speech then, something sharp enough to end her forever. But real turning points are often uglier. My hands shook. My cheek still held a faint bruise. My throat tasted like toothpaste and old river water. "Stay away from me," I said. Clara's mouth curved. "Or what? You'll tell people I remember my past life? Good luck." She was right. Evidence worked for USB drives, screenshots, slap marks, stolen templates. Not for reincarnated memories. If I accused her of knowing a timeline no one else remembered, I would hand her a cleaner weapon than any she had forged. So I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. "No," I said. "I'll let you keep proving who you are in this one." That irritated her more than a threat. She stepped closer. "You're not as innocent as you pretend. You enjoyed watching my upload fail." "Yes," I said. The honesty surprised both of us. For a moment I did. Her eyes widened, hungry for hypocrisy. I continued before she could feed. Then I went home and watched my mother see herself in my film. That mattered more. Something flickered across Clara's face, too fast to name. Envy, maybe, or grief for a language she did not speak. "You think that makes you better than me?"
"No."
"I think it makes me busy." I walked away before she could answer. That became the fourth pattern break, not in the story, but in me. I had spent my first life and the first hours of my second one orbiting Clara's reactions, measuring my worth by how well I could answer her. But some villains do not need a final duel every morning. Some need the starvation of your attention. So I went to the art room during lunch, and worked on the high-resolution export the judges requested. Noah helped me check color levels. Leo built a clean file naming system and looked personally betrayed by how many people used final_final, unironically. Mr. Wren arranged a supervised review of all Broadcast Club shared assets. My template was removed from Clara's folder and logged as mine. The school created a collaboration forum for future contests, which students complained about for exactly 2 days before admitting it prevented chaos. Clara watched from the edges, stripped of her usual machinery. Without constant favors, she became talented in flashes and helpless in stretches. She could frame a beautiful shot but could not organize a project. She could charm an interview subject but forgot to record room tone. She could speak passionately about storytelling but did not know how to finish a story without someone else tightening the seams. The tragedy, if I allowed myself to see it, was that Clara might have been good if she had accepted being unfinished. Instead, she had built a personality out of refusing to learn. The finalist showcase was held the following Thursday evening in the City Art Center, a glass building that looked expensive enough to make my father whisper, "Don't touch anything," even though he was touching the door. My mother wore a navy dress she had altered 3 times and still kept tugging at the sleeves. I wore a black dress borrowed from my cousin and shoes that punished ambition. The lobby smelled like coffee, raincoats, and nervous teenagers. Posters for the finalist films lined the walls, climate animations, spoken word pieces, experimental dance videos, a comedy about exam stress, my documentary thumbnail glowing softly between louder images. Stitches After Midnight. Directed and edited by Maya Lin. See my name printed that way made me dizzy. Not because it was grand, but because it was accurate. Clara arrived 10 minutes before the screening with her mother. I saw them from across the lobby. Mrs. Vale looked like a woman attending a funeral for a reputation. Clara wore pale blue and no smile. For a second, I wondered why she came. Then I saw the contest director greet her mother politely, but without warmth, and I understood. Damage control. Visibility. The oldest trick. If people see you standing calmly near the thing you lost, they may assume you were not removed from it. Clara's eyes found mine. This time she did not approach. Good. My film screened third. When the lights dimmed, I stopped breathing. The first shot appeared, my mother's hands threading a needle after midnight. The sound was clean. The captions held. The colors were warmer than my laptop had shown. The audience, strangers mostly, went quiet in the way that is different from boredom. They leaned in. My mother, beside me, gripped my hand so tightly one of my fingers cracked. On screen, Auntie Lean laughed about sewing prom dresses for girls who would never know she fixed them with a fever. Auntie Ruth described sending money overseas in envelopes hidden inside cookbooks. My mother said the line about invisible work, and somewhere behind us someone sniffed. I did not look back. I watched the film not as a wound, not as proof, but as a living thing that had survived the night. When the final shot faded, there was a small pause before the applause. That pause terrified me until I understood it. People were returning from somewhere. Then the clapping grew. My father clapped too loudly. My mother cried openly. I stared at the screen because if I looked at either of them, I would fall apart. Across the aisle, Clara sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded in her lap. She did not clap at first. Then, slowly, because not clapping would be too visible, she brought her palms together.
Once. Twice.
A performance, maybe. But the sound still entered the room under my name. I did not win the grand prize. That went to an animation about bushfire recovery made by a boy from a regional school who thanked his volunteer fire brigade and cried so hard he forgot half his speech. I was glad. Not fake glad, either. His film was beautiful, and old Maya would have measured that loss against Clara's stolen victory until it became another bruise. New Maya understood that not every spotlight taken by someone else is theft. I won the Documentary Editing Craft Award and a smaller mentorship grant that came with 6 months of online workshops, software access, and enough prize money to replace my dying laptop if I chose carefully. When they called my name, my legs went numb. I walked onto the stage under lights, so bright I could not see the audience. The contest director handed me a glass plaque, heavier than I expected, and said, "Your editing respected silence without losing momentum. That is rare." I almost laughed because every part of my life had been about learning what silence could hold. They offered me the microphone. I had not prepared a speech because some superstitious part of me believed preparing would tempt fate. So I stood there holding the plaque and spoke from the only place that felt steady. "Thank you for seeing this story," I said. "It's about women whose work happens after everyone else sleeps, and about the difference between being invisible and being unimportant. Those are not the same thing. I used to mix them up." My voice trembled. I let it. Thank you to my mom, who told me to make sure people could hear the voices, not just see the people. That changed the whole film. I looked into the dark where my family Saturday, and thank you to everyone who does quiet work and still deserves honest credit. That last phrase moved through the hall more sharply than I intended. I felt Clara hear it. I felt Mrs. Vale hear it. I felt Mr. Wren, somewhere near the back, understand exactly why I had said honest credit instead of help. After the ceremony, people congratulated me with little pastries in their hands. A judge asked about my editing workflow. A girl from another school asked if I would share my caption settings, and I said yes, then showed her how to create her own preset and label it with her initials. Teaching felt different from being used. It left both people standing. Near the exit, Clara waited beneath a poster for next year's contest. For a second, I considered walking past. Then she said, "You got your applause." I stopped. Not because she deserved a reply, but because I wanted to know whether the story had one more tooth. "Some of it," I said. "There's more work to do." She looked at the plaque. "I remembered you dying," she said quietly. "And you still think I'm the monster." The lobby noise blurred around us. "What did you feel when you remembered?" I asked. Her eyes shone. "Afraid." "For me?" She looked away. There was my answer. "Afraid it would ruin you," I said. "Afraid someone would find out what happened before I fell." "I didn't push you." "I know." That truth mattered. I would not make her guilt bigger than it was. "But you built the storm around me and followed me to watch what it did." Her mouth trembled. "You don't know what it's like always being expected to win." I almost smiled, not kindly. "You're right. I know what it's like being expected to help someone else win." We stood there, two girls carrying timelines nobody else could see, and for the first time Clara had no audience worth performing for. "What now?" she asked. It sounded almost genuine. I looked at my mother across the lobby, laughing with Auntie Lean near the tea table, her face brighter than any award. "Now," I said, "I stop editing your life and go live mine." The school tried to return to normal, because schools are factories of routine, and even scandal has to fit between bells. But normal did not return in the same shape. The broadcast club became less glamorous and more functional. Students signed asset sheets, logged edits, credited roles, and complained loudly while secretly enjoying the fact that no one could dump a half-dead project on them at 9 p.m. and call it friendship. Mr. Wren gave a mini lesson on metadata that made half the room paranoid and the other half better organized. Noah started calling undocumented favors Clara clauses, then stopped when I gave him a look. Leo made a poster that said credit is not a vibe, IT is a record, and taped it above the equipment cabinet. I pretended not to love it. Clara returned to club after a 2-week suspension, but not to leadership. She sat in the second row, took notes, and spoke only when necessary. Some students forgave her because she was pretty and wounded. Some avoided her because downfall is contagious. Brielle migrated toward another friend group with the speed of a bird sensing winter. I did not monitor any of it closely. That was my discipline, not turning her consequences into my new hobby. The mentorship workshops began on Saturdays. I learned color grading from a woman in Melbourne who could identify bad, white balance like a detective identifies blood spatter. I learned documentary structure from a director who said, "The most ethical cut is not always the prettiest cut." I wrote that down and underlined it 3 times. My mother's sewing circle started calling me director in 3 different accents, mostly to annoy me. My father asked whether documentary editing had stable career prospects, then watched tutorials beside me after dinner and pretended he was only checking the internet's feed. Life did not become perfect. I still flinched when group chats buzzed too fast. I still over-documented everything. I still had dreams where the upload bar froze at 92% and water rose around my ankles. But there were mornings when I woke and knew immediately where I was.
Alive.
Second life. My room. My own name. One afternoon, months later, I found Clara in the library suite, alone, staring at a timeline. Not mine. Hers. A new project, from the look of it. Raw footage of her grandmother arranging flowers in a backyard. The shots were shaky, but not empty. She saw me and stiffened. I could have walked away. I almost did. Then she said, "How do you keep the audio from clipping when someone laughs close to the mic?" Not sweetly. Not helplessly. Like the words had scraped her throat on the way out. I thought about all the answers I could give, and all the ones I owed her. None technically. But teaching is not the same as carrying. I stood in the doorway and said, "Lower the gain before recording. If it's already clipped, you can reduce the harshness, but you can't restore what isn't there." She nodded once, wrote it down, and did not ask me to fix it. That was all. No redemption music.
No hook.
No friendship resurrected from ashes. Just a girl learning that some damage cannot be polished out after the fact, and another girl learning that boundaries do not require cruelty to stay intact. I left before she could make it more. On the anniversary of the midnight upload, the Bright Frame contest opened again. The school announced it during assembly, and a ripple moved through the hall. Students turned toward me out of habit. Some turned toward Clara too. She looked straight ahead. I had already decided not to enter. Not because I was afraid, and not because Clara had ruined it, but because the mentorship had led me to a community archive project documenting migrant workers' night economies, and I wanted to spend the year building something longer than a contest entry. When Mr. N asked if I would run a workshop for new entrants, I said yes with conditions. No editing anyone's full project, no private emergency sessions, all advice in group format, all students responsible for their own export. He agreed immediately. The workshop filled. I taught file management first because glamour can wait and loss media cannot. I showed them how to name folders, back up raw footage, check licenses, record clean audio, export test files before deadline night, and credit collaborators clearly. The upload does not break at midnight, I told them, watching pens move across paper. The upload reveals what was broken earlier. I had not planned that sentence. It arrived from somewhere honest. Clara stood at the back by the door. I had not known she would come. She listened for 20 minutes, then raised her hand. The room tightened. "What if you realize too late that your project needs more help than you deserve?" she asked. Some students laughed nervously, thinking she had made a joke. I did not. "Then you narrow the project until it becomes something you can finish honestly," I said. "A smaller honest entry beats a bigger stolen one." Clara nodded. After the workshop, she handed me a form. Not a note. A form. Collaboration request, properly filled out, asking for 10 minutes of feedback on her rough cut during the supervised peer review block, with credit not required because feedback only, no direct editing. Her handwriting was neat. Her jaw was tense. I read it and signed the advisor line that said reviewed by workshop lead. 10 minutes, I said, in the group room. "I know," she replied. A pause stretched between us, filled with a past life, a midnight, a bridge, a slap, a failed upload, applause, silence. All of it too much for two girls standing beside a printer. "Maya," she said finally, "I'm not going to apologize in a way that asks you to comfort me." I looked at her. That was the first apology-shaped thing from her that did not immediately reach for my labor. "Okay," I said. "I am sorry," she said. "For using you. For lying. For the bridge, even if I didn't push you. For remembering and still trying again." My hands went cold. No one else could understand the last part, but the hallway was empty enough to hold it. I waited for the hook, the but, the explanation about pressure or winning or mothers. It did not come. She simply stood there, looking nauseous and relieved and terrified of being ordinary. Forgiveness did not bloom in me, but something unclenched. "Don't do it to anyone else," I said. She nodded. "I'm trying not to." It was not enough to rewrite the past. Nothing was. But it was enough to end the scene. The night of the next contest deadline, I did not go to the media lab. I went home. At 11:30 p.m., I sat at the kitchen table with my mother, helping trim threads from a pile of uniforms while rain worried at the windows. My laptop was open beside us, not exporting, not saving anyone, just playing a rough assembly of the archive project. My phone buzzed now, and then with workshop students posting progress updates in the group chat. Uploaded.
Processing.
Got confirmation. File too big, trying backup preset. Leo, now annoyingly competent, replied with reminders I had taught him. Noah posted a meme about H.264 being the backbone of civilization. At 11:52, Clara posted a screenshot. Submission received. Her entry title was Garden Hands.
No fireworks. No crown.
Just a clean upload, 10 minutes before the deadline, with credits listing camera by Clara Vale, interview by Clara Vale, feedback group, broadcast club peer review. My mother peered at the message. That the girl? Yes. The one who slapped you? Yes. She sniffed. Her file worked. Looks like it. Good. My mother said, cutting a loose thread with unnecessary force. Now she cannot say it is your fault. I laughed, and this time the sound held no sharp edge. At midnight, nothing broke. Or maybe that is wrong. Something did break. The spell of the old life. The belief that the night had to end with my hands rescuing someone who would erase me. The fear that refusing made me cruel. The invisible chain between Clara's panic and my obedience. The clock changed from 11:59 to 12 o'clock with no red banner, no scream, no bridge, no water. My mother poured tea. My father fell asleep in the armchair pretending to read. Rain softened to mist. I opened my archive footage and marked a clip where a bakery worker dusted flour from her palms before dawn. Invisible work, visible now. My own hands rested on the keyboard, not trembling. I thought of the girl I had been at 7:04, waking under the cracked clock with death still wet in her lungs and a USB drive swinging in front of her like bait. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her that refusal would feel like falling at first, that people would call her cold, selfish, dramatic, scary, jealous, rehearsed, and cruel because a girl stepping out from under someone else always looks like an earthquake to the person standing on her back. I wanted to tell her that the upload would break, yes, but not because she broke it. It would break because lies have deadlines too. I wanted to tell her that she would win something, lose some illusions, keep her name, teach others, survive applause, survive apology, survive the strange grief of discovering her enemy was also trapped in the same repeated night and still chose wrong. But maybe she did not need to know all that. Maybe all she needed, in that first impossible second, was the word she finally said.
No.
Small word. Clean cut. The first edit of my second life.